Welcome to English Mirror. This is a short analysis of the poem Telephone Conversation by Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka's poetry has often been described as a powerful and serious agent to social change. His themes are primarily concerned with the promotion of human rights and African politics. At the same time, such poems as Telephone Conversation reveal a lyrical understanding of the rhythms and resonances of language balanced with humor and a deeply felt compassion for the human condition. Appearing initially in the collection Modern Poetry from Africa, published in 1963, the poem is a provocative interrogation of racial prejudice, misguided civility, and the power of language to create ghettos of race and of spirit. Out of Soyinka's large body of work, Telephone Conversation is one of his most well-known and most often anthologized poems. Soyinka's Telephone Conversation appeared in the 1963 collection, and 2 years after, he was arrested for allegedly forcing a radio announcer to report incorrect election results. Soyinka was released 3 months later after the international writers group PEN made public the knowledge that no evidence had ever been produced in support of the arrest. A member of the Yoruba tribe, he was well schooled as a child in the stories of tribal gods and folklore, mostly because of his grandfather, who was a respected tribal elder. Internationally recognized for both his writing and his advocacy of democracy and civil rights, Soyinka has collected an impressive catalogue of rewards and honors, including Whittington Prize, the Nobel Prize for Literature, and the Enrico Mattei Award for Humanities. He was backed for the prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature in 1986. Soyinka continues to travel the world, speaking on the behalf of the oppressed and the marginalized. The poem opens with the African speaker clarifying the essential information about the location, the coast, and similar business details. The landlady is initially described as being of good breeding, a standing that makes her questions about the color of the speaker's skin seem suddenly and dramatically out of place. Specifically, she wants to know if he is light or very dark-skinned, a distinction that seems to carry a particular weight within the racial atmosphere of the day. From this pointed and clearly prejudicial question, the poem moves smoothly between the thoughts of the speaker as he considers the question as a political statement and the landlady's insistent repetition of the same questions or variations thereof. As the conversation unfolds, it becomes a painful accumulation of ironic miscommunication and blatant racism. The more the speaker tries to answer the questions, the deeper the exchange slips into irony as the speaker answers the woman with cool logic that clouds rather than clarifies the situation. At first, comparing himself to chocolate, for instance, the speaker settles on describing himself as West African sepia, a term he knows will further confuse his listener. As the speaker's ironic tone takes hold of the conversation, he begins to describe various body parts, from his hair to the soles of his feet, in an effort to explain to her that he is, like all people, several different colors. The final lines of the poem carry a double-edged message. The first is clear, making a judgment about a person's character based solely on the color of the skin is a key absurdity of racial prejudice. The second layer of the closing lines underscore the meeting of absurdity with additional absurdity, an approach Soyinka often brings to his explorations of such situations, as the speaker invites the woman to see for herself all the varied colors of the body parts he catalogues. Racial conflict. Telephone conversation is a dramatic dialogue in which a person of color responds to the racial prejudices of a woman with whom he is trying to negotiate rental accommodations. The satiric voice in Soyinka's poem is put in place through a series of linguistic and thematic juxtapositions. While the speaker notes that the landlady to whom he speaks is of good breeding, with a voice that is lipstick coated, long gold rolled, he is also quick to attach a series of words to her that carry an overabundance of negative connotations. She is described as clinical and as having a light impersonality to her demeanor. Elsewhere in the poem, readers are told that her accent clangs and that her silences are ill mannered. All of this takes place in a setting that is itself a circumstance that contributes to the satire. Ironic detachment. The figure of the speaker in telephone conversation is clearly positioned as an observer of his own situation. He is not a victim, nor is he angry, despite the blatant racial prejudice that he is forced to negotiate throughout his telephone exchange with the landlady. Oscillating between humor and irony, the speaker deploys his word with a cool and logical double edge. It is also important to remember that native Africans were treated as second-class citizens by the ruling class of European colonies. Thus, it is important to note that though Soyinka's poem explores the speaker's experiences of racism and displacement in a foreign country, that speaker would likely be subject to similar experiences in his own birthplace as well. Telephone conversation engages in a moral indictment of language itself, and more particularly in the superstitious slippage between meaning and prejudice. This is not a poem that seeks serenity in language, but demands transformation, change, and most of all, awareness. Soyinka is, as Alan Jacobs asserts in Wole Soyinka's Outrage, the divided soul of Nigeria's Nobel laureate, a writer of spectacular literary gifts, who has made his mark on contemporary literature, in part due to his profundity as an acclaimed lyric and satirical poet. Thank you for watching this video.